In the heart of Whistler, Texas, a small town tucked within the sweeping embrace of the vast Red Plains, stories flowed more freely than the scarce rain that graced its dusty streets. The tales here, spun from the dusty whispers of old-timers and the vivid imagination of the young, were as much a part of the town as the creaking wooden saloon and the time-worn church with its peeling white paint. Among these fabrications and half-truths was the chilling story of a woman in white, known simply as Ilara. Ilara was woven into the very fabric of Whistler's lore, a spectral figure said to wander the mist-laden hill just beyond the edge of town. The hill, crimson and bare, held a storied past. Many years ago, a bloody duel between star-crossed lovers, their names long since forgotten, had stained its soil. Ever since, the townsfolk swore that Ilara, clad in flowing white, drifted through the early morning fog, a ghost carrying the weight of that tragic legacy. Murmurs of her presence began like the distant wailing of the northerly winds, soft yet persistent, finding their way into the ears of those willing to listen. At the homely general store, old Mrs. Tompkins insisted she had seen Ilara late one evening, her form flickering like a far-off candle. Mr. Fuller, the blacksmith whose hands were perpetually blackened with soot, claimed he heard her mournful cries when the wind was just right. Young Emily Parker, with hair as bright as the western sunsets, dared her friends to venture up that ghostly rise, to see for themselves if the phantom was real, or merely a whispered figment of the town's collective imagination. The dare rarely found takers, for the fear of what met them at the top often outweighed the will to prove courage. Stories and whispers, however, were all Whistler held in these matters, for none could claim to have truly met Il, and so she became a symbol of warning and ominous tale shared by parents to keep curious children close to home. A story of portent, whispered by ranch hands around a crackling campfire. Yet, somewhere behind the curtain of myths, the truth lay shrouded just as thickly as the morning mist upon the hill. Ilara was no simple ghost, no irrational harbinger of doom. Her story, entwined with the town's own, waited patiently, like the seeds of wildflowers beneath the cold touch of winter, ready to bloom when the time was right. As the story of Ilara took on a life of its own, it was perhaps the lesson on judgment and understanding that remained its most poignant aspect, often lost amid the whispers and embellishments. For it was those things overlooked, like treasures buried under the relentless dust of Whistler, that held the real secrets worth uncovering. And so, Whistler lived on, carrying its tales on the winds that scoured its streets, painting the townspeople with strokes of mystery, until one day, the whispers of the past would lead not just to the chilling hill, but toward a deeper understanding and a revelation yet to be unearthed amid the truths and half-truths of the Red Plains. As dawn broke over the vast expanse, the whispers persisted, ever present, painting the tales of Whistler in shades of mystery and suspense, waiting patiently for the next chapter of its storied existence. The sun hung low in the vast Texas sky, casting long shadows over the dusty town of Whistler. Beneath its waning light, Jonas Harper made his way through the narrow streets, each step echoing with a quiet resolve known only to a desperate man. As the town's doctor, he healed many, yet he felt powerless against the sudden illness sapping the life from his own daughter. Lily, her laughter had once filled their home, a melody now replaced by the troubling silence that threatened to suffocate him. In the bustling saloon, whispers of the woman in white, Ilara, intertwined with the clang of glasses. A ghost, said some. Murderess hiding in the hills, muttered others. Jonas paid them no mind, focusing instead on the task at hand. He had heard rumors of rare medicinal herbs flourishing atop the Misty Hiller. Last hope, whispered to him by old Mrs. Grant, the midwife, after modern remedies had failed them. The path to the hill was as treacherous as it was steep, with rocks underfoot threatening to upend his journey. Yet each jagged step drew him further from the town's judgmental murmur and closer to the whispering winds of possibility. The memory of Lily's fevered eyes urged him onward, past twisted oaks standing like silent sentinels, and through underbrush that clawed at his clothes determinedly. As dusk settled in, the sky bled into hues of purple and crimson, painting the horizon with nature's fierce beauty. It was under this celestial canvas that Jonas paused, taking in the sprawling vista below. Whistler appeared diminished, as if the town's prejudices and small-mindedness had been blown away by the sweeping grandeur of the land. A single star blinked into existence above, sparking a memory from a not-so-distant past. He and Lily lay on the porch, counting the stars as his wife. Anne sang a lullaby, the song of the stars, she called it. Her absence ached within him. A wound time seemed determined to sharpen rather than dull. But for Lily, he would stand resolute, a guardian of hope, against the encroaching darkness. The air grew colder as he ascended, the temperature a stark contrast to the sweltering heat below. Jonas wrapped his coat tighter, a futile attempt against the biting chill. Each gust of wind whispering secrets he could barely discern. It wasn't just any wind, but a haunting murmur, like sighs of 1,000 souls. A lesser man might have turned back, but Jonas pressed on, driven by love that eclipsed fear. The stories about the haunted hill played through his mind. Was it cursed ground he tread upon, or merely the domain of forgotten truths? It would not be the first time Whistler chose superstition over understanding. After all, the summit loomed ahead, shrouded in the evening mist, like a world apart. Jonas pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the small, cloth-wrapped bundle he carried. The herbs, if they existed, would be found here. Their whispers called to him, the promise of life from the heart of the shadows. As he pushed through the final barrier of brambles, the landscape unfolded, a meadow of wildflowers swaying gently. Amidst them, his eyes settled on a solitary figure, clad in ethereal white, yet undeniably real. Stood a woman with hair that caught the moonlight's glower, living contradiction to Whistler's spectral legend. It was Alara. Startled by his intrusion, she turned, eyes wide but quickly softening into wary curiosity. Her expression was not one of fear, but of recognition, as if she'd been expecting something or someone to emerge from the hill's embrace. "I expected to meet ghosts tonight," Jonas found himself saying, breathless from more than the climb. Ilara's lips curved into a sad, knowing smile. "As did I," she replied, her voice carrying the warmth of a long-lost sunbeam. Her presence felt like an unexpected symphony breaking through silence, and in her, Jonas saw no spectre, no killer, only another soul entangled in the web of whispers spun by a town too eager to cast stones. Alara gestured to the ground where varied herbs sprouted, hidden jewels among the wildflowers. "You seek these?" she asked, kneeling to gather a small bundle. Jonas nodded. "For my daughter. She's unwell." As he spoke, the words carried an echo of vulnerability that seemed to resonate between them. Alara handed him the gathered herbs, her touch light and reassuring. "Then take them," she whispered, her voice firm yet gentle, "and know that she will be in my prayers." In that exchange, a simple sharing of hopes. Amidst the whispers of the Red Plains, a bond was forged, fragile as the flowers, and yet enduring. The woman the town called a ghost was flesh and blood, with a heart-seeking redemption beneath the starlit Texas sky. Together, they spent the night under the watchful stars, sharing stories and silences, until the first light of dawn painted the world anew. Jonas' heart quelled for the first time since Anne's passing, prepared to descend with his newly acquired treasures. With a promise to return, and tales not yet fully told, he made his way down the hill. The threads of a new story interwoven with hope, healing, and unyielding faith. And as he walked away, the whispers of the Red Plains followed, a persistent reminder that truth often lay where one least expected to find it, waiting patiently amidst the whispers. The sky blushed with the tender hues of dawn as Jonas ascended the hill, the town of Whistler a dwindling speck behind him. Each step along the narrow rock-strewn path echoed his determination, his boots whispering tales of grit and resolve. The air was crisp, carrying with it the earthy scent of impending rain mingled with the familiar aroma of wild sage. His mind, however, was a tempest-tangled. Thoughts of his frail daughter and the elusive herbs that might save her filled him with urgency. For weeks, whispers had preoccupied the townsfolk. Stories of the woman in white, weaving through saloon conversations and fireside chatter. Many spoke of how, when the mist cloaked the hills, she could be seen wandering, a ghostly figure, they claimed, ceaselessly seeking solace for her sins. But Jonas, a man of science and reason, had no patience for such tales. His faith lay in tangible acts of medicine, in the healing power of nature's bounty hidden in these very hills. As the first tendrils of mist wove around him, Jonas paused, catching his breath. His heart, though heavy with worry, beat steadily. He was close now. He could feel it, a presence, a change in the air, subtle yet distinct. And there she was. Ilara stood at the crest of the hill, her figure ethereal against the shifting mist. She wore a dress as white as the morning fog, her hair cascading past her shoulders like a waterfall of midnight. To Jonas, she seemed not a spectre, but a living portrait painted by the dawn's gentle light. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice soft yet clear, cutting through the silence that had enveloped the hilltop. Jonas shook his head, his eyes searching hers. "No," he replied, his voice steady but kind. "I am exactly where I need to be." There was a pause, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Elara's gaze softened, and she gestured for him to join her by a small, weathered rock that offered a panoramic view of the town below. "You're not like the others," she remarked, a hint of curiosity in her tone. "Most people come here only to stare from a distance." Jonas settled beside her, brushing dust from his trousers. "I'm here for my daughter," he confided, the concern in his voice unmistakable. "She's unwell, and I need to find herbs that might help her." Elara nodded, understanding lighting her eyes. "The land here holds secrets," she said. "If you know where to look, it can offer much. But why risk the whispers, the town? They believe I'm something to be feared." Jonas regarded her, thoughtful. "I trust my instincts more than gossip," he said. "And I've learned that there's always more to a story than the wind carries." A shadow of a smile touched Elara's lips, her guarded demeanor loosening. "Perhaps," she replied, her voice tinged with a mix of relief and gratitude. "But these tales, they are persistent." The two sat in companionable silence for a time, each lost in their thoughts, the world around them stirring with the sounds of awakening nature. Jonas found himself studying Elara, noting the quiet strength she exuded despite the fragility she wore, like a second skin. Her hands, resting on her lap, bore the marks of a healer, calloused but gentle. "You're a nurse," Jonas observed. His curiosity piqued. "At least, you were once." Elara nodded, her expression one of quiet reflection. "I practiced in the minor camps," she confided, her voice barely above a whisper. "But when the fever came, there was nothing we could do. Many died, and some were left looking for someone to blame." The gravity of her words settled over them, the truth stark and undeniable. Jonas felt a pang of empathy, recognizing the weight of unjust accusation. "Survival is often portrayed as guilt," he murmured, his own losses rendering him a kindred spirit. "But we know the truth, don't we?" Elara met his gaze, a flicker of hope rekindling in her eyes. "Yes," she agreed, her voice firmer now. "We do." As the sun rose higher, casting warm hues across the landscape, a bond formed between them, unspoken alliance in a world quick to judge and slow to forgive. Jonas found himself comforted by her presence, her resilience a balm to his own weary soul. "Let me help you find those herbs," Elara offered, rising gracefully. Her willingness to aid him felt like an olive branch extended amidst the chaos of their lives. Together, they scoured the hilltop, Elara guiding Jonas to patches of unseen greenery, thriving beneath the cover of morning dew. She spoke of each plant as she uncovered it, her knowledge vast and precise, a testament to her dedication and skill. Jonas listened intently, absorbing not just the practical lessons, but the deeper understanding of the land's gifts and curses. As they worked side by side, Elara began to share fragments of her past, of the mining town that once bustled with life, and the epidemic that had turned it into a ghost of itself. Jonas, in turn, spoke of his wife, gone too soon, and the light his daughter still brought to his days. In their exchange, they found solace, each word healing old wounds, weaving threads of trust through their shared experiences. By midday, Jonas had gathered enough herbs, their combined efforts breathing life into the hope he clutched so tightly. He regarded Elara with renewed gratitude, finding not a spectre but an ally, a woman who had endured and survived, much like the landscape around them. "Thank you," he said, his voice rich with sincerity. "For everything." Elara smiled, the gesture transforming her face with warmth. "We all need someone to believe in us," she replied. "Perhaps this is a beginning." As they stood on that windswept hill, surrounded by the whispers of legends and the rustle of prairie grasses, Jonas felt something within him shift, a spark of hope kindling anew. In Elara, he saw the possibility of healing, not just for his daughter but for himself, and perhaps even for a town locked in the past. Their meeting, unexpected and profound, would become a cornerstone in the story of Whistler, a tale not of ghosts or guilt but of understanding, redemption, and the enduring strength found in mutual compassion. Jonas stood at the edge of what seemed to be an endless tapestry of red dust and sparse vegetation, the early morning mist wrapping around his form like a shroud. He felt as if the past days had been a fever dreamer. mad rush to save his daughter, while the legends and whispers of Whistler whispered maliciously in his ears. His thoughts were interrupted by a shadow on the horizon, slowly gaining form and substance as it approached him. The shadow, a woman clad in white, resolved itself into Alara. The apparition the town feared and gossiped about was standing flesh and bone before him. Her presence was like a fragile thread, an unexpected intersection of fate, and Jonas could almost reach out and touch the anguish resting on her shoulders like a heavy veil. "You're not a ghost," Jonas said, almost to reassure himself against the phantoms of his imagination. Ilara's eyes, pools of sorrow, met his with a quiet resilience. "No, but sometimes I feel as invisible as one. In a world that sees only what it fears, it's easy to be mistaken for something you are not." Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of someone who had endured a lifetime of battles against the relentless tide of misunderstanding and prejudice. Her story began to unfold in the whispers of the wind that surrounded them, a tale of hardship, survival, and unjust accusation. Once a nurse in a bustling town further east, Alara had fled from a life where betrayal and tragedy had marked her as guilty by association. The duel on the hill, where once two men had fought over greed and pride, had cast a long shadow, vilifying her as the spectre who haunted these barren lands. Yet Alara had come here to escape, to find solace in the isolation, and, maybe, redemption. Jonas, still listening, felt the sting of his own judgments. How easy it had been to see her through the skewed lens of town gossip. How wrong they had all been. In her, he saw a defiance against a world quick to judge and slow to understand. He saw a fellow soul seeking peace amidst chaos. "People talk," he said, more to himself than to her, "because it's easier to reshape the world into stories we can understand, even if they're twisted." Alara nodded, understanding in her gaze. "I've learned to live with the whispers. They can't hurt you if you stop letting them define your truth." As they talked, Jonas found himself confessing his own pain, the loss of his wife, the desperate drive to save his daughter. There was something liberating in the vulnerability, something healing in sharing the burden with someone who heard and didn't judge, who saw and did not shy away. Together, they wandered the hill, Jonas collecting the herbs, while Alara shared her knowledge of their properties. She had once healed those who came to her, and the act of helping Jonas seemed to grant her a momentary reprieve from her own suffocating memories. In this landscape of red dust and resilient prairie grass, a silent pact formed between them, a promise to see each other for who they were, not the shadows cast by the tales woven around them. As the sun climbed higher, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the fog of suspicion and doubt lifted, leaving in its place a clarity of understanding. It was as if the earth beneath their feet acknowledged the change, the wildflowers nodding gently in agreement with the new story that Jonas and Alara began to write together. Understanding bloomed like those wildflowers, tentative yet tenacious. Amidst the whispers of a past they both longed to leave behind. As Jonas prepared to descend the hill, the bundle of herbs secure in his satchel, he turned to Alara with a newfound resolve. Here was a chance, a sliver of hope, not just for his daughter, but for himself and Alara, a chance to rewrite not just their own stories, but perhaps the narrative of a town trapped in fear. "Thank you," he said, words laced with gratitude and promise. "I won't let your kindness be another forgotten story." Alara smiled, a hint of light breaking through the clouds of her eyes. "Perhaps, together, we can show them that not all who wander are lost." As Jonas made his way down the hill, the seeds of understanding planted that day took root, promising growth and renewal. The town of Whistler, with all its prejudices and whispers, awaited below, but he was not afraid. For the first time in a long while, Jonas felt a stirring of hope. Together, he and Alara might just show the town that even in the harshest lands, new shoots of truth and compassion could emerge. Their journey was just beginning, but amidst the red plains and whispering winds, they had found an ally in each other, and in that they had already written the first chapter of their shared story, a tale of endurance, healing, and love that defied the relentless dust of the Texas frontier. As night gave way to a clear, starry sky over the red plains, the small town of Whistler lay quiet, save for the soft rustle of prairie grass and the occasional call of a night owl. The frontier life was one of routine, with each day blending into the next under the sweltering Texan sun. Yet, in recent days, a hum of new whispers buzzed beneath the town's outward calm. Where there once were tales of ghosts and murder, A new narrative was taking root, one much harder to confront, yet far more vital to the spirit of Whistler. Jonas and Ilara, marked by the harsh judgments of their pasts, stood defiantly against the prejudices that pervaded their lives. They found themselves bound not by fear of the whispers, but by a deep-seated need to rise above them, to prove that their story was one of transformation and resilience, rather than the scandalous murmurings that plagued their town. As Jonas continued to journey up the hill for herbs each morning, he found himself not only looking for remedies for his daughter's condition, but seeking solace in Ilara's company. Her presence, once misunderstood, became a balm to his grieving heart. On the hill's rugged terrain, they forged a partnership of necessity and of choice, to people finding peace amidst chaos, trust amidst betrayal. Ilara, whose hands had once been a source of hope for many, found in Jonas a mirror to her own struggles. Her past, twisted by those eager to lay blame, had cast a shadow long before she ever arrived in Whistler. Each day, together, they unraveled the tangled threads of rumors and half-truths. Jonas listened as Ilara recounted her journey, a nurse fleeing accusations unfounded, a healer forced to defend her own survival. In return, he shared stories of his own, a man who lost his anchor, struggling to keep his daughter tethered to the world. In the evenings, after supplying the much-needed herbs to the town's apothecary, Jonas and Ilara would return to the hill, talking until the last light of day faded. They spoke of dreams interrupted, futures uncertain, and the quiet determination to reclaim them. Slowly, unshackled by the confines of societal expectation, they began to rebuild themselves, piece by piece. As spring came to the Red Plains, and the first wildflowers burst forth, Whistler was forced to reckon with the undeniable bond growing between Jonas and Ilara. The townsfolk, once eager to gossip, found themselves confronted by the undeniable truth of their connection. Some sneered, clinging to old biases, whispering of witchcraft and supernatural ties. Others watched with skepticism, slowly giving way to understanding, as the duo's kindness and commitment to the town's well-being became evident. Their story, one of quiet rebellion against the entrenched norms, began to sow seeds of change in Whistler. Jonas, whose gentle nature had once been overshadowed by tragedy, found his voice again, advocating for acceptance. Ilara, her spirit stronger than any legend, taught those around her the healing power of compassion, the true essence of her calling. It was not without challenges. There were days when the weight of doubt pressed heavily upon them, the memories of those they had lost looming large. Yet in those moments, they found strength in one another, in the silent promise that neither would face their demons alone. The wildflowers, resilient and vibrant, stood as symbols of their defiance. Each petal whispered a testament to courage in the face of adversity. Slowly, a shift began in Whistler. Conversations once filled with suspicion and malice began to pivot toward curiosity, and then to acceptance and empathy. The town's murmurs grew softer, replaced by a gentle hum of collective healing. In time, Jonas's daughter, once frail and shadowed by illness, found strength in the remedies her father sought. With Ilara's guidance, her laughter, ringing through their modest home, became a beacon of what could be a tangible proof of love's power to mend what was broken. As the seasons turned, Jonas and Ilara's story became a lesson to Whistler, an unfolding narrative of faith over fear, truth over gossip. The town learned to celebrate diversity of experience, to embrace rather than shun. Jonas and Ilara, woven together by fate's unpredictable hand, had not only found love in unexpected places, but had helped a town to rediscover its humanity. Each dawn stole whispers of old, leaving behind a legacy of endurance and hope, firmly rooted as the tenacious prairie grass. Thus, on the wind-swept hill where legends were born or dispelled, Jonas and Ilara remained a living testament to the transformative power of love. A story written not in ink but lived in every moment they shared. The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the endless expanse of the Texas plains. Whistler, once a town shackled by its own whispers and ghostly tales, was stirring awake to a new chapter vividly painted by the efforts of Jonas and Ilara. Their journey had reached the ears of every resident, slowly transforming suspicion into curiosity and eventually acceptance. Jonas awoke each morning before first light, the chill of the high plains seeping into the cracks of his modest home. His daughter, Lily, was his first concern. Her frail form lay nestled beneath layers of quilts in the adjoining room, The rare herbs that he had gathered over the past weeks had begun to work their magic on her, testament not only to nature's resilience, but to Alara's keen knowledge of healing that the town had once feared rather than respected. Alara, accustomed to the harsh solitude of survival in the hills, found herself in a world she had nearly forgotten, one filled with human connection and purpose beyond mere survival. Her skills as a nurse, combined with Jonas's medical expertise, forged a partnership that resonated with the family's needs. Over time, their professional bond had unfurled into something deeper, like a vine reaching for sunlight, persistently growing against the odds. The townspeople, always eager for a spectacle, had at first watched the two with wary eyes. The market whispered when they walked side by side, Jonas alert and sharp, Alara with her head held high, unyielding. The tale of the ghostly woman and the doctor had now merged with truth, a new story weaving through the fabric of Whistler's collective consciousness. Yet some remnants of skepticism and prejudice remained, shadowy fingers refusing to release their hold completely. One evening, as the sun dipped below the red hills, casting shadows that danced upon the dusty streets, Jonas gathered the townsfolk at the center of Whistler. Far from a formal event, the gathering carried the air of an impending revelation. Alara stood beside him, a linchpin amidst a sea of anxious faces. "My friends," Jonas began, his voice cutting through the murmurs and the gathering night. "We've all heard the tales and harbored fears, but standing here today with Alara, I can tell you there's nothing to fear. We are who we choose to be." Alara nodded, stepping forward. Her voice, gentle and unwavering, reached out to each listener. "This land is ours to heal, not with suspicion, but with kindness and understanding. I owe you all the truth, and the truth is, like the herbs up in the hills, we too can choose to grow anew." A hushed silence followed, the wind whispering through the crowd. Then, to the duo's amazement, small groups nodded in agreement. Emboldened, a local florist, Meg, voiced the question on everyone's minds. "Do you intend to stay, Alara? Build a life here in Whistler?" Alara looked to Jonas, a wordless exchange passing between them, filled with shared dreams and burdens. "Yes," she replied with conviction. "This land holds ghosts, but it also holds promise." From that moment, it was as if the very air shifted. Conversations began to bubble, welcoming and curious, with townsfolk approaching Jonas and Alara to extend hands of friendship. The bond they had forged had begun to spread roots, and Whistler itself seemed to breathe easier. Weeks turned into months, and the once guarded hills above Whistler now saw paths carved by feet and imagination alike. Children, including the now recovered Lily, played amidst the wildflowers, while Jonas and Alara tended to patients and plans in the modest clinic they established together, a sanctuary of healing and hope. Their partnership, rooted in necessity, blossomed into affection and love. Each day was an exploration, not just of the vast landscape around them, but within themselves. Jonas's grief for his lost wife found peace in Alara's presence. Her past, ridden with judgments, slowly released its hold, allowing her to embrace a future she never thought possible. One quiet evening, beneath an expansive Texan sky studded with stars, Jonas proposed to Alara. His words, simple yet profound, echoed the journey they had undertaken together. "Alara, standing here with you, I've found a strength I never knew. Will you be my partner in this life, not out of circumstance, but choice?" Tears glistened in Alara's eyes, not of sadness, but of the joy that came with finding acceptance and love. "Yes, Jonas," she replied, her voice steady with emotion. "Together, we'll weave our own stories into this land." Their union was celebrated under the open skies, where red hills met azure horizons. It was an event that marked not just the love of two souls, but the proclamation and reinvention of narrative and identity for an entire community. As whispers of doubt faded, replaced by tales of resilience and renewal, Whistler came to realize that the fabric of history is constantly rewoven through acts of courage and compassion. Jonas and Alara, walking hand in hand, had written a new story, not only for themselves, but for every life touched by their journey, a testament to the power of love to bridge divides and heal even the deepest of wounds. In the heart of the Texas plains, amidst the whispers of the winds, a new dawn had indeed taken root, resilient and vibrant as the prairie grass that surrounded them.